Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing my next reading wrap up. So I'm going to be wrapping up the next 5 books that I've read with one additional short story. And that one is going to be the new Raven Boys short story that just came out called Opal. I'm going to be talking about that one at the end of the video. That way if you have not yet read The Raven Cycle, you can end the video on my last book. You'll be warned when I'm going to start talking about Opal, but there will be spoilers for some of the Raven Boys series. Okay, so the first book that I read is Wonder Woman by Leigh Bardugo. I had initially been hesitant to read this because I know this is going to be controversial, but Wonder Woman was never one of my favorite superheroes. I really preferred like Batgirl and Supergirl to Wonder Woman. I've read a couple of her stories, her comic stories, and I just didn't connect with them in the same way that I did with like Batgirl or with Supergirl. But I've loved all of Leigh Bardugo's books that I've read, so I was like, I have to give it a shot. And I really liked Marie Lu's Batman, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. So I did, and I read it, and I thought that it was enjoyable. It follows Diana. She is in the middle of a race on her island, and there is a boat crash, and she ends up finding this girl in the water, and she saves her, and because of that, she might be kicked off of the island with the rest of her sisters and with her mother. She decides that it is more important to her to save this girl and to try to right what's going on with her than it is to abide by the laws of the Amazons. So my favorite parts of this book were definitely when Diana first gets to New York City. The book largely takes place there, and when she's just discovering what culture is like in New York City and just like the social norms and stuff of the way that the city runs. That was so hilarious to me. There were parts where I was definitely laughing out loud because I just like couldn't get over the way that Diana was interacting with different people. And yeah, she just was so funny. So that to me was definitely my favorite, definitely the most enjoyable. All of her interactions with people like on the subway were so funny. Like I remember her just describing them. She saw them all like looking at their phones, and she's like, there's all of these people that look like zombies and they're just like staring at these boxes, and like she didn't understand what they were doing. And Aaliyah, who's the girl that she is helping, is in danger. She's the daughter of 2 very famous biologists who both passed away, and her only family really is her brother, and they're trying to get her to this spring in Greece in order to cure her from being a warbringer. They are just met with obstacle after obstacle when they're on their journey there, and I love Aaliyah's friend who's a fashion designer. So I thought that the cast of characters was really good, and just the humor in it, I was not expecting it to be so funny, as I have said. I also really love how female-centric the story is and how empowering it is for women. I think that is always one of the best things about any Wonder Woman story, is that they are very much about female empowerment. My one complaint is that I did feel like the book was more about Aaliyah than I did about it being about Diana. While it was definitely enjoyable, I think I liked the beginning half of the book a lot more than the latter half of the book. When it started getting into more of the action and stuff, like I thought it was good, but it wasn't holding my interest in the same way that the first half was. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Then I read Someone Like You by Sarah Dessen. I read this summer last year, and I didn't like it, so I wasn't sure what I was gonna do with Sarah Dessen, because I really did want to read all of her books because she is such a highly acclaimed author in the contemporary field, but I just didn't like that one. I thought it was boring, so I really needed something just mindless and quick, and I decided to give her second book a shot, and I'm so glad that I did because I really ended up enjoying this one. I think that the beginning of it was a little bit slow. It follows a girl named Haley and her best friend Scarlett. Scarlett ends up getting pregnant, and the guy that she got pregnant with he ended up dying before she even found out that she was pregnant. And it's just such a beautiful story about friendship and just about Scarlett kind of going through her pregnancy, but Haley's the main character, so it's also about Haley kind of rebelling from her mom, who's a therapist that has always been so like on top of everything that she does, and Haley trying to figure out who she is in life without following her parents' rules. And Haley ends up meeting this boy who's maybe not the best influence on her, so obviously her mother cannot stand him, but Haley really likes him because he's kind of exciting and different, and it's really just the friendship aspect of this book that that resulted in me loving it as much as I did. I really loved the exploration of Haley's relationship with her mother. I actually ended up like crying a couple times while I was reading this, and I think it's so interesting to read it now from an older person's point of view, because if I had read this when I was in high school, I definitely would have been on Haley's side about, you know, like, oh gosh, can't her parents just leave her alone, and can't she just like go and do what she wants? But as someone older with more experience, I was just like, oh, this guy is just not good for you. Like, this isn't you. You need to like not be with him and not do this. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm relating more to the mom in this story, which was so funny to me. I thought the ending of the book was perfect, and that was another one of the moments that left me in tears. And I think I just really liked Haley so much as a character because she's so unsure of herself and unsure of her place in the world, and she's really trying to figure it out. So it felt very relatable, especially if I would have read it at a time like when I was younger, when I was in that same kind of place. I think it would have had a really big impact on me if I had read it then. And I also just really liked how I feel like the way that Sarah wrote it, it really stresses the point that while Haley doesn't really know who she is as a teenager, like that's totally okay. And she's gonna have these experiences going on in her life that are gonna shape her into who she is. And she doesn't need to know who she is at this point in life. And like, just that's fine and that's normal. And you're just, you know, you're just not gonna have the answers, and you will learn them along the way. So I really appreciated that message. I thought it was really, really well done, and I really enjoyed this one a lot. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Falconer by Elizabeth May, and this is the first book in the Falconer trilogy, and I kind of picked this one up on a whim, and I did not know that it was gonna be about this badass female that hunts fairies. So you can imagine how pleasantly surprised I was when I first started reading it. This was so much better than I was expecting it to be, and I've heard from other people that every book in the series just keeps getting better, which like I can't even imagine because this one was so good. There are major steampunk vibes because the main character, Aliana, I think that's how you say her name, she is an inventor and she creates all of these things in order to help her while she's hunting fairies, which is really cool. And another one of the things that I really liked about it was that it takes place in Scotland, so it has like a beautiful landscape, and I love that it's just like there's all of this like folklore and legends, and people are kind of like nervous about fairies because they've been told stories from their families. Most people can't see them. She has this pixie named Derek who lives in her closet and mends her clothes and gets drunk on honey all the time, and he is hilarious. He was one of my favorite characters in the book. He was so funny. Then there's Kieran McKay, who seems to be a very attractive fairy that Aliana trains with, and he helps her to learn like the most effective ways to kill the fairies. But as you all know, you shouldn't trust fairies because they're full of secrets. You learn a lot about him as the story goes on, and I'm still forming my opinion on him. So overall, I just felt like the book really captured the essence of fairies. A lot of them were very brutal, a lot of them were out for blood. The book was full of action scenes, and the plot moved along really quickly. It was very fast-paced. It's relatively short for a fantasy novel, so I'm really glad that there are more of them because I cannot wait to read them. I thought Aliana was a really strong character. I loved that she was so against being courted and just succumbing to societal norms and fulfilling her role and just getting married and stuff. All she wants to do is just kill fairies. And there's a reason why she's so hell-bent on that, which you find out pretty early on in the book. But I really, really loved this one. It just far surpassed my expectations. And it also kind of like, it's kind of like old steampunk Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's great. And I ended up giving this one 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Keeping the Moon by Sarah Dessen, and clearly I really enjoyed the last Sarah Dessen book since I wanted to jump into the next one so quickly. This one follows a girl named Coley who goes and stays with her eccentric aunt Mira over the summer. She is somebody who has had an interesting past, and she has never really made or had any friends. She spent a lot of her life moving around. She also spent a lot of her life being overweight, but she's since lost that weight, and she has zero self-confidence, so inside she still has this warped view of who she is and what she deserves. She ends up working at Last Chance, which is like a grill / diner place, and she meets these 2 girls, Isabel and Morgan, who are the very best of friends, and the 3 of them end up becoming friends, and Coley really learns a lot about herself and a lot about self-confidence and just about the power of friendship through them. This one also takes place in Colby, so I believe this is the first Sarah Dessen book that is kind of like connected with the rest of the books that she has written, because I feel like I've heard about that town in other books, but I'm not sure. So I have to keep reading to find out if that is the case. Another standout character in this book was Norman, who is kind of like an artsy guy that a lot of the other people don't see the value in because they're so set on like sports and like what they think is like the right way of life. And Norman is so intelligent and kind and interesting, and every time that Coley would have a conversation with him, like I just found him fascinating, and he was definitely the kind of person that I would want to be friends with. So I really, really liked him as well. So overall, I thought this one was very cute, and it definitely did what I wanted it to do. It was a really quick read. I didn't like it as much as Someone Like You, but I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, and I am really excited to read more of Sarah's books. Then I listened to The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle on audio, and the audiobook is narrated by Peter S. Beagle, who is the author. So that was good in the sense that all of the jokes and everything would land the way that he intended them to, and it also was really nice because there are several times that songs are sung within here and he would sing them to a tune. So usually when I like read songs in books, I am completely musically challenged, so I just read them straight as they are, and there's no way that I could put them to a tune. I just can't do that. I'm just not musical. So that added to it for me. But overall, I didn't really like his voice as a narrator, so that was like kind of a mixed bag for me. I definitely want to reread this one and read it as a physical book as opposed to listening to him tell it. But this was just a really like sweet and whimsical story. It's like a classic fantasy story. It just has all of those elements of old fantasy that I really love. It's really kind of a sad story too because it follows the last unicorn, and she teams up with Schmendrick the magician, whose magic does not often work, and Molly Grew, who is someone that believes in legends but is very scared of other things. And the 3 of them go to King Haggard's castle searching for the other unicorns because she's heard legends and she can't believe that she's the last unicorn in the world, that there has to be more of them. There is this red bull that is hunting her along the way, and yeah, it's just really sweet and heartwarming, and I just felt like it's like a quintessential fantasy read. I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars, and I'm pretty sure that when I reread it physically, it will be a 5-star read for me. And then lastly, my bonus short story that I'm going to talk about is Opal by Maggie Stiefvater. So if you have not yet read The Raven Cycle, you may want to shut off the video here because there will be some minor spoilers ahead for the end of The Raven Cycle. Hopefully that was enough time for you to get out of here if you needed to. But Opal was just a quick like 40-page story, and it follows Opal, who we meet in toward the very end of the last book in The Raven Cycle. She is part human, but she also has horse hooves. Ronan actually took her out of a dream. This story, which I wasn't expecting, is actually told from Opal's perspective. I think I would have liked it more if it was told from someone else's perspective. It was cool to be in her head for a limited amount of time, but I definitely wouldn't want to read like a book from her perspective. She has a very interesting way of seeing the world because she came out of a dream, so she's still learning all of the rules and what she's allowed and not allowed to do, and she often just does like funny things without realizing because she just doesn't know that that's not like what people usually do. I really, really, really loved all of the moments between Ronan and Adam. It was so adorable, especially now that they are together, and oh my gosh, it was just like warmed my heart when they were together, and like, oh my god, I loved it. That was really what made this story for me. If there was not as much Ronan and Adam, I wouldn't have really liked it as much. The ending of this story definitely made me want that Ronan trilogy like even more. Like I need it so bad. It was like, it definitely left something to be desired because it is such a short story, but that's usually how it goes with short stories. So it was really nice just to have these extra scenes within this world that I love so much, but it wasn't like the best thing that I've ever read in the Raven Cycle. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. So those are the next 5 books that I have read. Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know if you have any opinions on them. I talked about some of them in my currently reading video last week, but these were like my full opinions now that I've finished reading them. And yeah, I'm reading some really good books right now too, so I'm also excited to do my next one of these, which will probably be next weekend. Woo! So that is all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!